Hello there! Welcome to the Art of Photography. This is lesson number 6, and I am Kelly Coursey-Gray, your host. Recently I went on vacation, and when I went on a vacation, a lot of people ask me questions. They ask me questions because when they're on vacation, very often they are sipping a beverage by a pool or relaxing on a beach. And I'm running around like a maniac taking photographs. And one of the things people say to me is, "You take an awful lot of photographs." And my reply is, yes, I do. Because that's what I'm here to do. And then I get the question, well, what do you do with your photographs? And I use my photographs for teaching purposes. I enter shows, I enter competitions, and generally I love to go to new places and take photographs, and sometimes you don't know what you'll use those photographs for in the future, but something comes up and it works out nicely. Then I get the question, well, how do you decide? Because I'm taking a lot of photos. Click, 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 click. And people are saying, well, if you take so many, doesn't it take you forever to go through them? And how do you decide which ones are the best? Well, these are all really, really good questions. And since I get asked these questions a lot when I'm on vacation, I thought I would take a little time and answer them for you. And I will give you some tips on what to do with your photographs and perhaps how to choose which ones you want to keep. The first thing I would say is develop a system with your photography and then try to be consistent about it. I have worked on ships for 8 years now, and one of the most horrific things to me as a photographer is I have seen people jostle someone else or get pushed into someone else, and that person drops their camera overboard. I know, can you believe it? And then the even worse part of the situation, not only is their camera gone, but their camera chip is gone. And a lot of people have not backed up their photographs at all. And so they have lost everything on their camera in addition to the device that takes pictures. Now, sometimes that's their cell phone and they have a system, but other times they are devastated, and sometimes there are memories that just cannot be replaced. So the first thing I tell people is develop a system to save your images and be consistent. When I'm on a trip, I take out each chip, I download each chip each night. And I've developed a system, and I'm going to show you what that system looks like. One of the first things I recommend that you do if you're going on a big trip or if you're taking a lot of pictures in general is invest in a couple good SD cards, whatever size is appropriate for your camera. You can see the SD, the mini SD, and the micro SD cards in this image on the left side. And then people ask, well, what do all those little numbers mean? And there are a variety of numbers on the card, but if you have a DSLR or a mirrorless camera, one of the numbers you should pay attention to are those that I've circled in yellow here. The two SD cards that I've got, the one on the bottom processes 95 megabytes per second. But the one on the top right processes 300 megabytes per second. And I have invested in several cards that are 300 megabytes per second, especially if I'm going to use those cards for action shots like wildlife shooting, because my camera has the ability to take 6 to 8 frames per second, but the only way that that will work is if the chip can process that much information that quickly in my camera. So when you see a huge price difference between the two chips on the screen on the right, one processes more slowly at 95 megabytes per second, the other processes much more quickly. Now, if you're using your cell phone, this doesn't matter at all, but I just wanted to mention it because people do ask about this. The second thing I will say is if you are using a cell phone, make sure that you are using a cloud service. If you have an iPhone, use iCloud. If you're using an Android, you can use Google, you can use Microsoft. You can invest in a variety of different cloud services, but that way your photos are backed up on the cloud, and if something would happen to you physically to your phone or your device, you can utilize this space and pull your photos down from wherever you might be. So this is one thing that you can do to make sure that your photos are safe. Now, I'm a photographer, and so I travel with several hard drives, and I took a picture of a couple of my portable hard drives there on the left. And you'll notice that I put stickers all over them. I tend to have 3 drives with me on any trip, and I tend to back up each of my chips in a folder on each of those hard drives. I'm consistent about it, and I have this little ritual. I come back from my adventures, I charge my batteries, and I download my chips. That way I don't ever have to worry about did I save the images or not. Now you might think it's a little excessive to download the chip onto 3 hard drives, but in that this is really important to me as I'm a photographer. This is why I take a lot of the trips that I do. I've invested a lot of money in the equipment. I've invested a lot of money and time in the actual trips or adventures. And so I want to make sure that my investment is secure. I have had one of these hard drives fail. And they are very sensitive. You can drop them on the floor and poof, they are done. Now they've made them better and better over the years, but I've had one just sitting on my desk. 1 second it was working, the next second it completely failed. Had I not had everything backed up on another drive, oh my goodness, I would have been crying for days. Now when I return from a trip, I take the portable hard drives of all the adventures and I back everything up onto a bigger hard drive that uses electricity that I plug in, so something similar to the one on the right. I have numerous drives at home, and since I have numerous drives, I've taken to sticking stickers on them, and then that way I can keep track of which files are on which drive. Almost all the drives are black. They look very similar no matter what the brand. I don't have any brand specifications that I use specifically. I just have several hard drives and everything's backed up. Then, to keep it straight so that I'm sure that I have all my files, you can see I'm a little obsessive here. I've created a spreadsheet, and each of the drives I've color-coded. I can see that one I put stickers of Star Wars characters. It's an 8 terabyte drive, and that's in orange. So all the work that I did in that particular time frame, those are the things that I have backed up. In teal or turquoise, I have a sticker that says, "All who wander are not lost." So a lot of my work from 2018, 2019 is on that drive. And you can see that I keep tabs of this so that if I want to, I can go and find any file that I want anytime. Now these hard drives are getting bigger and bigger all the time. And so now I've purchased a couple 12 terabyte hard drives. That doesn't mean you can store 12 terabytes on them. It's usually about 10.5 terabytes or 11 terabytes. The point of this story is I back up my files multiple times, and I even have a cloud service for this as well. Now, for all of you who are like, I'm not a photographer, I'm not that obsessed, that's perfectly fine, but I did want to answer the question for those people who have wondered, what do you do with all those pictures? Once I've downloaded my chips, there are a variety of different systems that people use to keep their photos so that they can find them. And I've taken to making a file folder for each day or each place, and then I label it. So you can see on the left, I went to Antarctica, February 4th. I put Antarctica, and I used the word spectacular with 3 exclamation points because it was the first day I've ever been to Antarctica, and it was sunny and beautiful and one of the best days of my life. The next day was Antarctica mixed weather, February 6th, Antarctica, and February 7th, Antarctica sunny, and we went to see some of the bases that are there, not just from the ship. So then within there, I've put all the folders, which you can see on the top right of the slide. You can see all the folders from my day in Antarctica, February 4th. Now, this was probably one of the biggest days of my life as far as taking pictures. I was up from 5 a.m. until 11 or 11:30 at night. And other than short breaks for eating, using the facilities, I was taking pictures all day. Mainly, I was tremendously excited, and I also, having spent a lot of time in polar regions, I knew just how special the weather was. So then at the bottom right, you can see all of the files sitting there. And because this was an incredible place and the weather was so spectacular, I took my images in both RAW and JPEG. So we can discuss a little bit more about that as we go along. If you're using a cell phone, then obviously you don't have those choices. As a photographer, especially if lighting situations are really tricky, I like to shoot in RAW. Some people shoot only in RAW, and others just shoot in JPEG. Now, for a lot of people that are doing photography casually, that means absolutely nothing to you. So let's just focus on the actual images for a few minutes. If you have questions about RAW versus JPEG, please go ahead and email me. Get in touch via the Facebook or YouTube, and I'll be happy to answer any questions directly. Now, what you can see is on this screen, you can see 16 images, and this is just a screenshot of my computer. And what I like to do is, because there's so many images, and in this case, it's a whole bunch of pictures of me trying to capture the gorgeous little gentoo penguins jumping up and swimming around near me. What I like to do is put the images in an area where I can scroll and then show an image on the side that's very big. And then I will start to eliminate images like this one that are blurry. So this one is blurry, so for me, it's technically not something that I want to keep, so I would delete it and I would move on to the next file. Now here, this is an image that I might open up and perhaps work with a bit or post and show my friends, because this one's pretty cool. You can see a couple of the penguins jumping. One is re-entering the water. The other has just jumped out of the water. And if you look carefully, you can see 2 penguins underwater because I was using a polarizing filter. So I really like this one. This image shows a penguin just emerging from the water, and you can distinctly see 3 penguins under the water. And so I really like that one. What I might do is create a file and put all my favorites, or if I'm in the mood, then I might click into it and do any editing that I might want to do. Looks like there are a couple dust spots on this, so I would definitely fix those. And here's one that I really liked, because you can see a lot of action with the penguins. You can see one is jumping, heading back into the water, one is jumping, heading out of the water, and there's a penguin underwater and a penguin about to surface. The only problem with this picture is it's kind of a bullseye composition. What do I mean by that? A bullseye composition is almost all the action is in the absolute center of the image. And when I put the third lines that we've discussed before, I've got my two vertical third lines and my two horizontal third lines. You can see that the majority of the action of this image is in the center. So I'm not sure if this is the best picture because of that, because I'm not sure if people's eyes will circle around and take in the whole of it or just stop at the penguin in the middle. So I kept looking, and oh, I really liked this one. And one of the reasons is the action is happening in the top left third of the image. There's an interesting reflection of the Gen 2 penguin who's out of the water, and you can see 4 more penguins under the water. And so if I had to choose between the former image and this image, this is probably one of the images that I would select to, I don't know, post on one of the social media sites, or maybe even make a print and frame it and hang it in my room as one of the coolest things I have seen thus far. Now, I want to encourage you to take a lot of pictures, and if you ever have the chance to go snorkeling and or doing activities underwater, and you take an underwater camera, or you have anything to do with wildlife, I will encourage you to take a lot of pictures. When it comes to underwater photography, this is a Titan triggerfish, by the way, and they can be quite grumpy if they are guarding a nest of their little ones, so you have to be quite careful swimming near these fellas and ladies. This particular triggerfish was actually making a nest, so it started to move around and shift some of the sand. And I took a lot of pictures of this fish, having taken many pictures underwater and just many pictures of wildlife in general. I know that the more you take, the more you have to choose from. And especially underwater, strange things happen and things are blurry because you've lost a lot of light by going underwater. So here the triggerfish was swimming. I do have a zoom on my little underwater camera, so this fish was not tremendously close. And I was pretty excited about that. As you can see that this triggerfish has some pretty prominent teeth. And here's another view, and I love this because he has very googly eyes, and you can see his big teeth directly. Now, this is one of the triggerfish that you would definitely want to avoid. If it started swimming directly at you, if it wasn't occupied and it started to come at you, they have been known to bite people. It's something they do, of course, to protect their young. But this triggerfish was busy building its nest, so it didn't have young yet. And even though it looks close, I was very happily about 15 to 20 feet away from this fish. Here, the fish is smushing itself into the sand and churning it up, trying to make a nice spot for the kiddos. And one of the ways that I knew that this fish wasn't bothered by me is it continued doing what it was doing. So it paid no attention to me, and I just very quietly and calmly hovered where I was, unmoving, and took its picture. So I took a lot of pictures, and ultimately, I think this is one of my favorites because the fish here has gone down, taken a bite full of rock and sand, and it's spitting it out. So it's showing the action of nest building. Now, one of the key aspects of taking pictures of wildlife, since I've shown you some pictures of wildlife that I've taken, is if you get too close to the animal or the bird, you will know because it will change what it is doing. If you make it change what it's doing, you're too close. This image was shot with a long lens, and this owl, this is a northern short-eared owl. I took this photograph up in the Arctic, and this owl was curious about me, and I was curious about it, and it swirled around me 2-3 times. I was spinning around like Wonder Woman, trying to take its picture, and I got some very nice images. With wildlife, if you are patient and you approach slowly and quietly, if you get too close, they change what they're doing, you back off, they will forget that you are there, and the wildlife will do what it is doing, and it will allow you to get fantastic photographs. There's a lot of quote-unquote rules and ethics that are utilized by wildlife photographers, and that is to protect the wildlife, because as a photographer, I love to be around wildlife, but I certainly don't want to hurt it in any way. So many photographers will post if the image is of a wild animal, and of course if you take an image of a captive animal, that's perfectly legitimate, but do make sure that you let people know that it's a captive animal. I took a lot of pictures from a boat with a very long lens of these gorgeous New Zealand fur seals, and I really liked this image, but I probably took several hundred pictures, and then I went through one by one and I found the one with the 3 seals looking at me, a gorgeous background, and the seals were in focus. And if you're ever shooting from a ship or a boat, and you're using a camera or cell phone, you want to use the running man if that is an option on your device. And you want to take a lot of pictures because the motion of the ocean, and usually the animals are quite distant from you, it can cause a lot of issues. So if you really want to be sure that you get a great shot, take a lot of them and use a fast shutter speed or the running man on your camera. Now, all the photos that I'm showing you here, multiple images were taken, and these were all taken with my camera and a long lens. I don't know how I did it, but I didn't actually do it. I just took a photo. But these beautiful sandhill cranes are showing the different wing movements as they fly away. And here, again, this is a brown bear. A lot of people call them grizzly bears. This is a coastal brown bear in Alaska, and it is eating salmon. I took this image with a long lens, so the bear knew I was there, but I was also in a group of people, and we were standing far away from the bear. The bear was playing around in the water, and the bear was aware of us, and we were aware of it, but it forgot about us because it was eating and happy. There were a large group of people, but we were on one side, so the bear always had a means to escape and get away from us if we annoyed it in any way. and thus it was a fantastic situation to find oneself in. All right, well, here is your number 6 assignment. When you get out and you're taking a picture of a subject, I want you to take extra pictures, a lot of pictures, especially if you're taking pictures of something that moves. And then I want you to go through those pictures with a critical eye. I personally discard images that are out of focus, or the lighting is horrible, or if there's something technically wrong with the image, I just throw those away. If there's nothing technically wrong with the image, then I'll just let it sit on my hard drive, I'll take it home, I'll back it up, and then down the line with the computer looking at a huge image on a screen, that's when I make final choices and good decisions. Very often things look good on your phone or on the back of your camera, but you can't necessarily tell if they are in focus till you get them on a bigger screen. Look at all the images that you like, decide which ones you like best, and really think about developing a system for storing your photographs. Post your favorite photographs, as always, to the Southern Alleghenies Museum of Art Ligonier webpage for this video, and I'll be happy to make comments, or feel free to reach out and email. My name is Kelly Coursey-Gray. I hope you learned a little something today, a little bit different, and next week we'll do the Art of Photography, lesson number 7. Have fun and take lots of pictures.